Everyone in the gaming industry seems to be talking about Stellar Blade, and even the people who claim to not like it are bringing it plenty of attention. But the director recently did a series of interviews, and he also rejected microtransactions, promising that the game will not require players to spend any additional money beyond what they paid for in the package. I have a few different things to show off, but before we get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, follow me on social media, and consider supporting through Patreon or through YouTube memberships. Now, when it comes to microtransactions, they're not very micro in video games anymore, and we have seen a plethora of titles drop microtransactions the day of release, which infuriates people. That happened with Dragon's Dogma 2 recently. But hearing the director reject microtransactions is truly phenomenal. I just don't think that the hype could get any higher for Stellar Blade. Everybody seems really excited for it, and the people who aren't are just making the people who are even more. And it just seems like everything with this game was taken so carefully and crafted so carefully, even down to the microtransactions. They're rejecting microtransactions, they're embracing femininity with the designs, they're embracing releasing a polished product because they had delayed it in order to get it just right. It really seems like everything with this game is going phenomenally so far, but it says in continuing his seeming use of the Western video game industry's recent failures as a guide as to what to avoid with his upcoming title, the Shift Up CEO and Stellar Blade director has promised that outside of one very specific and possible instance, the upcoming action title will feature absolutely zero microtransactions. Kim made this promise to players while speaking on the game's future during a recent interview. At one point during his time with the outlet, his unnamed interviewer broached the topic of how today's console titles do not end with release, as in addition to content updates, including DLC releases, developers provide balance patches if necessary. And of course, he does say that if they accidentally miss something or the game is lacking something, they definitely will fix it after launch. They are not going to just release this game and abandon it. But he also said we will also be working on balance patches to make the game even more enjoyable for those who started early, and that those who come in later don't experience any inconvenience. But we're not sure if we're even going to be releasing DLC, but we're working on free updates like additional outfits. And to this end, he declared to the public, we want to make it clear at this point that Stellar Blade will not require players to spend any additional money beyond what they paid for with the initial package, aka what you got in the initial edition of the game that you purchased. Like, I am personally purchasing the digital deluxe edition. I want to give them extra money. I want extra perks during my gameplay, so I am going to be buying the digital deluxe edition. I am sad that there is not a physical version of it, but I do want to support this game as much as possible. But I think that these statements are absolutely fantastic, because he is saying that, of course, if after launch anything is broken or anything needs to be tweaked, we will be putting the time and effort into it. It's great, of course, to not hear, oh yeah, well, we'll be adding stuff to it, it just happens to be paid stuff. But actually hearing that, they want to make it clear that Stellar Blade will not require us to spend any additional money does not come as such a positive statement when you hear that they're not even sure if they will be releasing DLC, because of course when you have a really good game, I am more than happy to pay a bit of extra money to experience DLC, like Shadow of the Erdtree, for instance, right? It's $40, but it is going to be an absolutely massive DLC with tons of bosses, brand big new open world areas, lots of lore. It is going to be a giant experience, and it is going to be tons and tons and tons of hours of extra content, so I am more than willing to pay $40 for that. But in the case of something like this, I hope that their minds will be swayed and they will end up releasing DLC for the game, because I do think that it is going to be a phenomenal title. I played the demo on live stream, I had an absolute blast with it, and I know so many other people did as well, so I hope that they end up releasing DLC. Now, of course, all the better if it ends up being free, but I would be willing to pay some kind of money money for that, and I think most people who are enjoying the game so far from the demo and are following it up to launch would agree. But he says, unfortunately, albeit understandably, he then proceeded to note that despite his best intentions, there did exist one such situation where the Shift Up team would be required to charge for DLC, crossover costumes with other established franchises. But we are talking about the ability to purchase individual costumes here, and I say this all the time. I don't think that having paid costumes in a game is a problem as long as they do not hold any stats and they are not outrageously priced. Like if we are talking $1 or $2 for a costume, I don't necessarily think that that is the worst case scenario. We see other games like Apex Legends where you have to spend $15 to $20 for one singular costume, which is absurd. Even though a lot of companies do it, I would be, of course, okay as long as the cash shop is very carefully crafted and nothing holds stats. We're not talking about outrageous price tags here. I think that a lot of people would agree. The only exception to this is if we create collaborative outfits with third-party IPs. Those may be sold for a fee, he clarified. Also, there's no New Game Plus in the launch version, but stay tuned for that very soon. But again, he's not saying that this is going to be like a paid feature afterwards. We've heard a little bit about the New Game Plus plans, and that happens to be that after release, they are going to be adding it to the game. Not very shocking there as long as they do plan to add it at some point, which it definitely sounds like that is their focus. And finally, he actually expanded his attentions from the game's content roadmap to the IP's overall future. He was asked whether Shift Up would continue to produce single-player titles with definitive endings, especially in the face of rising development costs across the industry, and he said it's a very acute issue because of the rising development costs, of course. Honestly, I get a lot of advice from people that I should make games with higher operating margins, but I think what our industry needs more than anything is diversity of titles. Console titles, single-player games with endings are very important in their own right, and it's healthier for the market to continue to make these games and for them to coexist with other genres and platforms, which is why Shift Up will continue to take on the console challenge. We have a strong desire to continue to make games that make the average gamer see the ending and return to reality feeling good, which I think, again, is a really good statement, and I do agree that the industry needs a diversity of titles. I mean, this is what made the gaming industry so strong in the first place and got it to where it is today, is you could play any sort of video game. You could play a very adult-themed game with blood and guts and gore. You could play games like Animal Crossing and farming simulators where you're simply on a farm and you're planting potatoes and you're fishing and you are, going around, and things like Pokemon where you're, collecting creatures. And I mean, the gaming industry has always had such a vast a variety of different types of games for all different age groups and all different types of players, which I think is so phenomenal. But with all of these statements, it seems that the whole entire team behind Stellar Blade is very confident in the product they're creating and the future of this game, and I do think that it is going to be a massive seller. I think that so many people are going to buy it and support it. The only downside is the fact that it is not releasing on everything. It is a PlayStation 5 exclusive, so you can't even get it on PC at launch. I hope that they obviously do end up bringing it to PC at some point in the future, but the director has rejected microtransactions and promised the game will not require players to spend any additional money, and all of his statements so far have been absolutely fantastic. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.